Welcome to Sector Report. I'm David Beatson. This week, what's next for New Zealand's largest farmer? How can we produce more meat while we lower the livestock sector's carbon emissions? And is that new home on a rural lifestyle block all it's cracked up to be?
A lot of people were surprised when the said was coming out here. Everybody, in fact, thought I was absolutely mad.
Well, were they? Last year, Angela and Jeff Kemp were a couple of real townies living in a loft apartment in trendy Devonport. She was an award-winning journalist at the local paper and he was lecturing at Auckland University. But this year, life's changed. Like so many other New Zealanders, they've been tempted to shift onto a rural lifestyle block, a 6-hectare patch of Pukekohe. There, the Kemps share their property with 6,000 pine trees, 2 sick horses, an SPCA rescue goat, and their beloved dogs, Teddy and Harry. Our rural correspondent Neil Parker has been out on the block running a sanity check.
Once upon a time, 2 children were uprooted from the home they loved and taken far, far away. A lot of people were surprised when the said was coming out here. Everybody, in fact, thought I was absolutely mad. But no, I wasn't. We'd spent 10 years in Devonport, in the city, working hard, bringing up the kids, putting them through school. But our dream always, when we came out to New Zealand, was to live in the country and have some space that we could never afford in England. So that was a dream, and it became reality nearly a year ago. So down there's the arena.
Right.
And we've got a little goat house on there now, which we call Nixon's Batch, where he goes when the weather's fine. And then there's a little stream goes down there that eventually feeds into the Waikato. I'm hoping that this arena area here I'm going to have as a vegetable patch, but the plan is really to make a garden of significance here, as I'm a keen gardener, and to, plant it up, recreate a stately home of England.
It's going to be a hell of a vegetable garden.
It will be, yeah. I might be able to have a little stall at Pukekohe Market.
But why Pukekohe?
Well, we looked at various properties around Pukekohe, Waiuku district, because it was a sort of countryside we related to, not as bush-ridden as the north and the west. Felt more pastoral, more what we were used to, really. Come on.
Yeah.
Good boys, come on, in you come. And one day we chanced upon this and drove down the drive, saw the view, and that was it.
How many trees have you?
Well, we haven't counted them, but told that they planted 6,000 when they first moved the property on here 15 years ago. And it seems to be a mixture of Scotch pine and macrocarpa, really. But the Scotch pines are huge.
That's a hell of a lot of wood, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Keep the home fires burning for many years to come.
Hundreds of years, I'd
Yeah.
say. Did you miss Devonport?
Not really. We inherited with the property 15 sheep, which straight away seemed to cause us problems in that a couple of them had fly strike. So we quickly read up about what we should do about that and eventually caught them, which was no easy feat as they got lost in the bush. And my manicured fingernails came into play, plucking out maggots from their nether regions, as did my eyebrow tweezers. Oh, Nixon. Hello. Hello, Nixon. How are you? Who's this, look? He actually prefers Vogels, but I don't have any of that today. Yeah, you're a good little goat, aren't you, Nixon? When I came here, I thought, what a lovely spot for a wedding. I've got 4 daughters, and I got Jeff to make that archway because I envisaged it smothered with white roses, and my girls underneath there on the happiest day of their lives. And I still hold that dream, and they know I've got that dream. So hopefully by the time the roses cover the arch, they'll be ready to tie the knot with some deserving man. So I've inscribed it in Latin, which I thought was a fitting phrase, and it says, "Made with love by a husband for his wife." Well, This is Jeff's first attempt at wood carving. And it's the first macrocarp he chopped down. And every year when we lived in Devonport, we used to go to the pump house where they had a wood carving sculpture competition and marvel at the works that were produced there. So, as a joke, he said, "Oh, I can do that." And after quite a few hours, he said, "Come and look at this." And he made himself a little chair which he can just about squeeze into, but he said it's worth it for the view.
It's fantastic.
Perfect. When we first visited this house, which was approximately a year ago now, I walked into the garden and thought, oh wow, that view is something else, and felt immediately, as you do in some places, that this was home.
So the whole place is just full of meaning for you, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And so we've been here such a short time, but already, it just feels like a home that we've belonged to forever, really. I've got absolutely no regrets. Of course, I'm fortunate I'm here all day and I've been able to supervise and do a lot of the renovations of the house and plan and plant a wonderful garden. When we lived in the country in England, you weren't called lifestylers, you were just somebody who preferred village life and the rural way of life. I do feel a bit fish out of water because I still like my city ways of wearing makeup and quite flamboyant clothes. And so I've had a few remarks about that, about am I going somewhere, when from the postman and other people who come by but say, no, I'm not going anywhere, I'm just here. But no, so I'm just being myself and loving it and being accepted too.
Is it convenient living out here?
Well, it's convenient to me because I stay here. It depends what you want from your life, and if you want to move away from the stresses, the noise, the traffic, and want to enjoy the peace and the beauty of this countryside, it's perfect, but I know it wouldn't be for everyone.
What have been the downsides?
Personally, none. I don't mind it's a 15-minute drive to the nearest shops in Tuakau, nearly half an hour into the big metropolis of Pukekohe, but you just work your life around that.
So this is Tuakau.
Yes, so this is little Tuakau. This is the main shopping precinct, little local butcher's store there.
Oh yeah, quality meats, yes.
A few bakeries.
And is it everything you want, Ange? Can you get everything you want here?
Well, not everything. We do look at petrol prices now, which we never used to when we lived in Auckland. We do think twice now about jumping in the car and just going off. We now think, can we double up? Can we make that journey work for us in other ways?
The locals seem very friendly here, don't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. It's a slow life, pace of life, my plum.
So you've been accepted.
Tuakau was quite, I have to say, was quite a culture shock, but it's friendly. Hi! How are you today?
Good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm very well.
Hi.
Can we have some coffees first, please? It's a lovely place. You say hello to people. You feel it's home. It's our New Zealand home. It's a place where we're really putting down our roots now. We've finally made our decision that this is where we're never leaving this place. Their parents told them it would be the best place to live in the whole of New Zealand, that they would make lots of new friends and be able to have horses, dogs, cats, and even a small goat.
Rural correspondent Neil Parker with Angie and Jeff Kemp at Pukekohe. And next, New Zealand's biggest farmer gives us the rundown on current performance and future prospects. Stay with Sector Report. The country's biggest farming company, Crown-owned Landcorp, has seen its operating profit dip 36% in the last financial year, and it forecasts another decline in the year ahead. Landcorp runs close to 600,000 sheep, more than 180,000 deer, 88,000 beef cattle and 50,000 dairy cows. And with 3,000 hectares of farms, it'll pay the government a $20 million dividend this year. Joining us now is Landcorp's Chief Executive, Chris Kelly. Chris, thanks for coming in. What factors knocked your livestock business operating profit in the last year?
Oh, David, our operating profit, I was quite proud of it, actually. Having said that, it was off the back.
Not as good as your record.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And that was almost exclusively driven by the dairy payout in the prior year. $7.80, of course, was an absolute record. So that knocked it back. But look, an operating profit of 27 million over turnover of about 220 million, bit over 10%. And of course, 20 million's going to Bill English and the coffers of the Crown. So we're reasonably proud.
Do you have to give them that much?
We'd like not to.
Well, I'm just going to say.
No.
Didn't leave you much to actually invest in the business.
No, that's fair. But one of our KPIs is achieving 75% of our net operating profit going back as a dividend to the Crown. Look, they own us. And I think it's fair that they're asking for their whack. It's difficult economic times at present. I guess the other thing about last year was the weather. It was just extraordinarily benign. So we had, in terms of our production figures, record production in terms of dairy solids, record lambing, fattened more lambs than we've ever done. And, other farmers were the same.
Well, in theory, so it's all external factors rather than actual
largely,
operating factors.
This sounds a bit of an excuse, but operationally, what we did do was do an exercise as if the payout was the same as the prior year, and I think our operating profit would have been north of 40 million had that been the case. So they're external factors.
Oh well, I wish.
Yes, of course.
What's your outlook for the current year?
Oh look, it's rather pessimistic, and a number of reasons for that. I think firstly, we can't expect that we're going to have as benign weather conditions this year as we had last year. That's point one. Point two, of course, is that Fonterra continues to revise its forecast downward. The dollar keeps just climbing inexorably, and that's a real challenge for us. Red meat prices are back. So I'm somewhat more pessimistic this year, I have to say.
Well, one of the things that you've got is options across the board. You've got beef, dairy, sheep meat, wool, venison, you name it. You're there.
Yeah.
So where's your focus going to be over this?
Look, we're going to focus again on production. So we're going to try and grow our lambs out as hard and as fast as we can, get them off the land in heavier condition. We're looking to extend our fixed price contracts, and particularly we had a very successful contract last year with Tesco's, supplied them 170-odd thousand lambs into their Tesco's Finest program. That worked very well. We fixed the price early in the year, which allowed us to hedge against the UK pound. That in turn, I think, gave us an extra about $1 a kilo, which was a big advantage. We're going to do more of that this year. We're going to continue to crank up our dairy units, which are still relatively young. Our oldest dairy farm is still only about 9 or 10 years old, so there's more upside there. So we'll be focusing on the productivity on-farm issues, and the prices will set themselves, I guess.
Shanghai pension.
Oh, don't mention that word.
Well, I will.
Yes, I'm sure you will.
You're waiting, I presume, to implement the management contract that you have.
Yes,
but of course, there is further court action to go.
Yes.
Can you give me an update on where things are at?
Yes, I can. In terms of the legal timelines, there were 20 working days. The Supreme Court has allowed 20 working days, having lodged the appeal for the appellants to make their case. They then give that to the defendants, as it were. They have another 15 working days in which to mount their case. The Supreme Court then decides whether to accept the appeal or not, and it's their decision. I did hear yesterday that the lawyers for Shanghai Punzing are trying to fast-track that process. If that's the case, then I'm hoping that within the next month the appeal will go before the Supreme Court. They will then elect whether to accept it or not. I'm hoping they won't accept it, obviously, and so maybe before Christmas. The worry, though, is that if they don't accept that fast track, we're looking at Christmas, January's gone, then you're sort of looking at mid-February, which would be a real problem.
Period. Okay. How is that continuing delay affecting you? Do you have holding costs that you're carrying because you're waiting to get on with the job?
Yes, we do have a number. But also, of course, the receivers are in a rather invidious position. They've been hoping every day, literally, that they will be relieved of those farms. They are rather capital constrained because, they're working on behalf of the banks and they don't want to spend the bank's money. So the farms themselves need reasonably urgent upgrade, and that's a challenge. Morale on the farms obviously I'm not sure what it's like, but it would be a bit of a challenge for them as well. So I'm just hoping we'll get on with it and get going, really.
In getting on with it, adding 16 significant farms to your portfolio, does that increased scale give you some scale efficiencies across your operation?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It'll give us more opportunity to swap cows around our different herds. It'll give us more opportunity to talk to manufacturers and others about our input costs, because we'll be using more inputs, of course, things like fertiliser, fencing, water, troughs, all that sort of stuff.
You got a number around that?
I reckon we can save around about 15 to 20%.
15 to 20%?
Off our input costs, yes.
Really? That's a major difference.
Well, it is. But, you know, we unashamedly use our buying power. I often say that if you're a Landcorp farm manager and you want a ute and you don't like white Toyota Hiluxes, then you get a job elsewhere.
That's a great promo for the Toyota white Hilux.
Well, we sell them after.
Thank you very much. I hope you're getting a commission on that.
Oh, well, okay. There you go.
Well, one of the things, last week we were looking at the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise proposals for some major farm know-how sales, export projects in China and South America.
Yes.
Now, do you see Landcorp being a player in that? In that area?
Yeah, we would like to be. And one of the conditions of the Overseas Investment Office are that Shanghai Punzing will assist Landcorp in their activities in China. They have access to something like 10,000 hectares of land in the Anhui province, which is west of Shanghai. They're looking currently at developing a very large sheep flock. They already have a flock of about 10,000 animals. They're looking to up that to 3 million.
So they're not experienced farmers?
They're not experienced farmers at all.
They've just got how many?
A lot.
Yes. Okay.
So they're looking to us to do the actual farming. They will do the marketing, of course. That's where their expertise is. And so I think there's real opportunities there. And it won't be costing us big money. We'll be selling, or not selling, but exporting, if you like, our expertise, bringing the money back to New Zealand and hoping to pay the government more money.
Chris Kelly, thank you very much on behalf of the taxpayers.
My pleasure.
Chris Kelly, Chief Executive at Landcorp. Some say it's impossible to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from livestock farming. Coming next, the research team leader who's proved they're wrong. After the break on Sector Report. Well, the numbers are in. A study conducted for Beef and Lamb New Zealand shows that from 1990 to 2008, greenhouse gas emissions from the sheep and beef sector fell 14%, while total meat and fibre production jumped 15%. One of the biggest factors, the production of New Zealand lamb. Over that same 8-year period, New Zealand produced more lamb for the plate of a national flock that shrank 43% in size, a huge productivity improvement that reduced the lamb sector's carbon footprint by more than 20%. But how do you go about calculating and tracking a carbon footprint? Here's the research team leader, Stuart Ledgard. Welcome, Stuart. First of all, I mean, this thing, the carbon footprint, how do you go about defining and sizing a carbon footprint?
Right, well, it tries to cover the whole of the life cycle of a product. So even when we extract raw materials to put on land for fertilisers, the production, the processing, shipping, transport, retail, consumer, and even the waste stage at the end of it. So it looks at a life cycle approach.
So when you talk about a carbon footprint, I mean, does it cover, however, all of the different greenhouse gas emissions that we've got to have a concern for in terms of dealing with climate change?
Yes, it covers everything from animal methane production, nitrous oxide in soil, CO2 from the fuel we use, and refrigerant losses and so on.
Now, from the data that you had to gather, and how long did you have to take to get all the data? I mean, that in itself, looking at the scope that you were talking about, is a huge job.
Yes, it's a very long process with all of the parts of it. But the key part really from the farm production side was supplied through Beef and Lamb New Zealand. So they've got excellent databases of animal production numbers and so on.
From the data that you had, I mean, could you really conclude that we actually have, or can have, less animals, eating less food, delivering more meat, with less greenhouse gas emission at the end of the day.
Well, I think
that sounds like the miracle.
Yeah.
How do you go about it?
Well, the lamb industry is probably the most effective, and they've shown reductions from our calculations over the last 2 decades of more than 25%. And essentially, they've had.
I was going to ask you how you go backwards.
Right.
Sort of reverse engineering. Where do you start?
Well, the main, on farm level, the main driver is really the feed consumption. So the more feed they eat, a proportion of that feed ends up being lost through methane and nitrous oxide and so on. So if we've got a good understanding of feed conversion efficiency into product, then that's really the main driver.
And you're saying that you've actually, if you look back over 17 years, that we've really done it.
Yes, well,
so what's happened?
Sheep, lambing percentage has increased considerably through time. We're heavier lambs, finished more quickly, and all of that keeping the same level of lamb production over the last 2 decades approximately, with more than 40% less used to produce that. So there is much more efficient feed conversion in total into that lamb product at the end. Okay,
well you've obviously been looking hard behind the farm gate, but there's still a big chain from there on before you establish carbon footprint and can reduce it.
Yes.
Have you actually identified some of the other ways or other areas in which emission reductions could be made?
Yes, think of the process, the meat processor level, there's quite a high energy requirement there, and they've looked to less coal, more natural gas, more efficient energy sources and effluent processing on plants. So that's led to potential reductions of up to 50%, but they only represent actually 2% of the total carbon footprint. So not large reductions there. Shipping. There is slow steaming as a practice that's starting to happen, which is reducing emissions there. And again, I guess one of the good messages is that stage, the shipping stage, is also only about 2 to 3% of the total carbon footprint. So it's not a big part of it.
So where is the bulk of it? Is the bulk of it on farm?
Yes, for both sheep and beef sectors, the numbers indicate about 90% of the total is from the on-farm stage. Probably the second biggest one is nutrient efficiency. So farmers that are use soil testing, identify the exact amount of fertilisers and lime they need rather than any excess, because the process of manufacturing fertilisers and their use has got emissions associated with it. So that's another opportunity for reductions that have happened.
Is what you've done actually accepted internationally?
Right, yes. Well, we started with a methodology, so a life cycle assessment and aligning to ISO standards, the approach is used so that there's a level of acceptance there. But as always, the level is in the detail. And when it comes to the methods, we've been working with groups in Scandinavia and France and the UK that are also working in this area to develop up a common methodology. And beef and lamb have been quite proactive in that.
That's pretty critical to any global effort. I mean, is there an opportunity for New Zealand, say, to set a international standard in the work that you're doing?
I think it's certainly leading it and getting an international agreement. So with the lamb work, Beef and Lamb New Zealand initiated a project which we drafted a common methodology approach, and that's gone to a number of groups internationally, supported by the International Meat Secretariat, and that's currently in its sort of second circuit of agreement through different people to defining.
So we may be on the road.
Yes.
Okay, but tell me, at the end of the day, I mean, most people think of this as being, this is hard yakka. There isn't anything in it. Is there really something in it for the farmer at the end of the day?
Well, indirectly, I think there is. So, firstly, the importance of market access. You know, it's in labelling in supermarkets. Important we have information to supply the the supermarkets that demand this information. So from a supply, from understanding how efficient we are compared to other countries, and also I guess the underlying point that the feed conversion efficiency and nutrient management are so key to this, which are also critical for farms for profitability and their wider environmental efficiency.
Stuart Ledgard, thank you very much. Stuart Ledgard, Research Team Leader from Beef and Lamb New Zealand's Carbon Footprint Project. And that's all from Sector Report. You can check out our programs anytime online at www.country99tv.co.nz. Thanks for your company. I'm David Beatson. See you next time.